It's the 2019 edition of the prestigious Nigeria Media Merits Awards ceremony, and these veterans, as well as those still active in the industry, are here to make the celebration worthwhile. The acting chairman of the NMMA Board of Trustees sets the tone for the event. He has a word or two for individuals in the media profession.
This phenomenon, if not checked, will single-handedly ruin not just our profession, but what we stand for. And the only way to stem its ruthless tide is by exhibiting the audacity of credibility.
Now to the main business of the day. Winners emerged in different categories of print and electronic media. Some eminent Nigerians are honored for their dedication to media professionalism, excellence, and service to the nation. And then there was an anxious moment, a wait for the announcement for the television station of the year.
And the winner of the NBC prize for the television station of the year is Channels Television.
Special Channels TV. God is that.
First of all, we have to thank Almighty God for receiving this award. This award means so much to us because this is the 13th time Channels Television has won it. So we thank God for that. And our special thanks to our captain, our chairman, Dr. John Momo, and Dr. Mrs. Momo, for driving the ship for us.
Other dignitaries present at the occasion had this to say.
You are doing a great job, really, and one was there encourage you to keep it up. You know, and maybe keep on winning it every year. Yes.
We are all offshoot of NTA when we were monopolists, but now you can see that NTA has produced very good personnel, and I'm very proud of Channels.
The record-breaking 13th Television Station of the Year award won by Channels TV. And for the management and staff of the station, it's another reminder to keep raising the bar of quality broadcasting in Nigeria.
Yes, the lucky 13, and I tell you, we're so proud and so happy, and especially for those of you who are watching and said, yes, this is where I want to watch, this is where I want to view, this is where I want to get the news, this is where we're talking about believability, this is what we're talking about reality, this is where we say, yes, where did you hear it from? Where you say, did you hear the news from Channels? Where else? And that is why we are trustworthiness. And I tell you, this is just, like the GM said, a step in the right direction, something to spur us on and get better. And with you guys at home pushing us, as those of our head here are pushing us, well, now, yes, it will always get better. But I tell you this, we're talking about the decade. We're talking about 2010 to 2019. You had 13, right? But there are 10 years in a decade. I tell you, Channels TV, 8 over 10. What else? The TV station again of the decade. We did it the last decade, 5 over 10. This decade, 8 over 10. Maybe the next decade, 2020 to 2029, 10 over 10. Okay. We're just happy and we're just celebrating, and I hope you are also happy with us. We continue where we stopped last week, and that is how we are going to go next week also. We're reviewing the decade 2010 to 2019. We're looking at the sportsmen that really, did great things, went beyond the limit. I mean, performed excellently, who were best in their chosen field, the field they said I want to be, who were the best basketballer, the best Formula 1 driver, the best footballer, controversial, I tell you this, that one, the best table tennis, the best tennis player, the best swimmer. I remember Michael Phelps. And at the end of the day, by next week, we shall look at the best of the best and get the athlete of the decade. But this week, we are talking athletics. Athletics, like we said, gave Nigeria her first ever medal. Her first ever medal. Yes, tell them we said so here. We got the guy did that jump, and we got that medal in the Empire Games. The athletics gave us our first gold medal. Yes, the first gold medal in the Olympics is athletics. And I tell her this, you know, she jumped, and then she brought on that medal. So athletics has been there. We've dominated. We have the innocent that the president said is not innocent. We've had the Chidi Imos. We have the twin brothers. I mean, so a lot of them have come in to come and do us proud. So today we are reviewing athletics. And I tell you who is best fit to do that for us than Bambo Akani. Hello, Bambo. I'm told you are there. How are you? Oh, yeah?
Looking forward to round off the decade.
Yes.
Looking forward to it.
Bambo is speaking to us from Washington, D.C., so I know maybe he just got up from sleep. But I tell you this. So, Bambo, let's look at the decade. Let's look at it. Before we look at the world, how do you see what transpired within our own space, the Nigerian athletic space, in the last 10 years?
Well, the last 10 years for Nigerian athletics has been quite tough. We've not had a lot of things to celebrate, unfortunately. I mean, if you look at the decade, there are 2 Olympic Games and 5 World Championships. And I think, you know, in terms of rating how we've done as a sport this decade, we have to compare ourselves to the decades before. And unfortunately, this decade, I think we were debating yesterday that this decade, I suppose, is going to be called the 10s, I guess, the 2010s.
Yeah.
But this decade is the first decade since the 70s, I think, that Nigeria has not won a medal at the Olympics in athletics. You know, we won medals in 88 and 84. We won medals in 92 and 96. We won medals in 2000, 2004, 2008. Yeah. Unfortunately, we have not won any medal in 2012 or 2016, which is unfortunate, at the Olympics. And then at the, at the World Championships, I think Blessing Okagbare won a couple of medals in 2013. And then we had a gap for 2015, 2017. And we only had Ese Brume break that 6-year duck in Doha in October. So it's been a tough decade, for Nigerian athletics. There is light at the end of the tunnel. There are positive signs of an upturn. But yeah, I wouldn't mince any words and say it's been a very tough decade for Nigeria in athletics.
I think myself and my guys here, I think we love your choice of word when you say tough. Maybe there are other words that you could have chosen to use to describe a state where in 2012, like you said, not just athletic, but it was 0-0-0, no bronze, no silver, no gold. And then in 2016, it was the Samson Sasia boys that made us smile when you say smile with a bronze. But when you look at the UK and that, you know exactly what we are talking about. Okay, I will stick with the word tough. So how do you score us in that your toughness over 10?
Oh, you mean for Nigeria?
Yes, for Nigeria, yes. How do you score us in the decade? Athletics.
Well, I'm very diplomatic, so I might not want to give a score out of 10. But I would want to focus on who our athletes of the decade are.
All right. Okay.
I think obviously it goes without saying that our number 1 athlete, female and overall athlete of the decade is Blessing Okagbare. Exactly. She has held up Nigerian athletics all by herself. Obviously we're talking about the world medals in long jump and 200 meters in 2013. But she has been consistently at the top of her game in the 100 meters and 200 meters in the world over the last 10 years. Obviously, she's run a fantastic African record in the 200 meters, 22:04. And then also, and she took that from Marion Yali, by the way, which was standing since 1996. And then in the 100 meters, she only lost her African record in the 100 meters by 100th of a second to Muriel Ahure. So, Blessing Okagbare is undoubtedly Nigeria's athlete of the decade. I think special mention should go to the likes of Tobi Amusan and Ese Brume, who are also leading the light for Nigeria on the female side. Tobi in the 100-meter hurdles, Ese, of course, in the long jump. I mean, Ese was a Commonwealth champion in 2014, would you believe? And 5 years later, she's now a world bronze medalist, also a finalist at the Olympics in 2016. So they get special mention. On the men's side, I would say that I would only want to mention one person as athlete of the decade for the men, and I would say that's Divine Ojuduru, Mr. I Never Experienced It himself. I think he's helped to reawaken the men's athletics in Nigeria, because while the women like Blessing were winning medals on the world stage and have won medals on the world stage in the last 10 years, the men have not really had much to write home about probably since 2004, when the likes of Deji Aliyu and Uchenna Medulu won bronze in the Olympics. So in the last 15 years, the men have not had much to shout about. But Divine has made it entertaining. Divine came up through the World Youth in 2013. And that was when he first got famous for saying, "I never experienced it," in an interview. And since then, he has really backed up his internet sensation fame with his performance, from the World Junior Silver in the 200 meters in 2014, through several national and African medals. And obviously this past year being I think he was in the top 3 in both the 100 and 200 meters in the whole world. So, kudos to him, and looking forward to him, I would say, leading Nigeria's male athletes into the next decade.
Okay, I wanted to ask you. I know I wanted to ask you. I asked you, not wanted. I know I did ask you what you would have scored us if you were not being diplomatic. I love that. But then instead of that, let me just ask you a futuristic question. Going into the next decade, from what is from the foundations, and so you said you are seeing. Do you see light at the end of the tunnel, or at the start of the tunnel of the next decade?
Certainly, I think there's a lot of light at the end of the tunnel. The performance of this decade is because we had, as a nation, we've forgotten the things that actually help athletes to perform well, help athletes to win. In previous decades, a lot of our athletes were in good scholarship programs in the US. That sort of dried up over the last 20 years. We're feeling the effects now in the last 10 years. So, getting back to where we used to be, at least, we now have a good group of athletes coming up in the US through the scholarship system, the likes of Divine and Tobi Amusan, Raymond Ekemwo. We also have a good group of athletes here in Nigeria, some of them at, my own club, Making of Champions, but also you have the likes of Favour Ofili, who is, I think, already in the top 40 in the world in 400 meters. She's still a teenager. You have the likes of Rosemary Chukwuma. So, we have a good double-pronged attack, I think, in terms of home-based athletes, foreign-based athletes, and they're mostly very young. So I'm looking forward to the next decade, particularly the next few years. I think will really set the tone for how Nigeria will do in athletics in the 2020s.
Okay. At least that should put a smile on our faces. It's better to hear good news, even if it's is getting out there. But let us go to the world now. 2010 to 2019, who has been what has it been, and who has been the dominant athletes, at least within this period?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting one. I mean, with the world's athletics over the last 10 years, a couple of names immediately come to mind. But I'll try to talk about athletics, not just, obviously a lot of us have the bias for the track events, but I'll try and talk about those athletes who were most dominant in those 2 Olympic Games, in those 5 World Championships in the last 10 years. I mean, so on the male side, I would say, Christian Taylor is one of those athletes who, well, I'll probably mention the top athletes before saying the number one. So I would say Christian Taylor, Mo Farah, Eliud Kipchoge. So Christian Taylor has been dominant in the triple jump the last 10 years, won both Olympic Games. I think he's won 4 golds out of the 5 world championships in the triple jump. Only about 5 centimeters away from the world record, I think still held by Jonathan Edwards. So Christian Taylor has been completely dominant in the triple jump. You've had people like Will Clay trying to wrestle that number 1 spot from him in recent years. But he is the triple jumper of the decade, no doubt. And kudos to him for, trying to set up this recent athlete association and fighting for the rights of athletes. The other person I mentioned is Mo Farah. I mean, I don't think it's happened before to have a long distance athlete win both the 5,000 and 10,000 meters at 2 consecutive Olympic Games. Really, really incredible. Well done to him. Eliud Kipchoge, I mean, he's the marathoner of the decade, marathoner of our lifetime. I mean, would you believe that he's won 12 out of the 13 marathons he's ever entered into? He's won one of the major marathons every year since 2014. Obviously, he's the world record holder and unofficially the first man to run under 2 hours in the marathon. Obviously, we saw the Ineos Challenge a couple of months ago. And that's amazing because if you look at the early 2000s, Kipchoge was more of a 5,000 meter runner, winning silver, gold, bronze here and there at the Olympics and the Worlds. But really, he stepped up and became the marathoner of the decade in the 2010s. And then obviously, I think I would say in the men's side, the number 1 would go to Usain Bolt. Granted, his world records came the previous decade, but he still completed his dominance in the sprints in the 2 Olympics, and really was the face of athletics, over the last 10 plus years. So that would be my number 1 pick for the male athlete of the decade. On the women's side, I think you see a lot of great performances, probably a bit less dominance than some of the others on the male side. But I would mention the likes of Sandra Perkovic in the discus, completely dominant. I think she's won medals at the Worlds in 4 of the last 5 Worlds. She was a gold medalist at the 2 Olympic Games. Same goes for Katerina Ibagwen in the triple jump. She's been completely dominant this decade. Only recently in the last couple of years has Rojas really taken over her crown. But you have to look at Katerina and say, not only was she dominant in the triple jump, she also was very adept in the long jump as well, winning both golds at the Continental Cup in 2018. But Katerina is also special, I think, because she actually won in all the 5 world championships. She won a medal in every single one of them in the triple jump, and then also gold and silver in London and Rio. So moving on to the sprints, I would also mention Allyson Felix. She's had an insane amount of medals. I think in her career, about 27 medals in the Worlds and Olympics, and 2/3 of them came in this decade. You name it, 200 meters, 400 meters, 4x1 relay, 4x4 relay, and most recently the mixed 4x4. So Allyson has been very, very special athlete for this decade. She and the next person I'm going to talk about have also have the distinction of going to have babies, coming back, and winning gold medals again at the highest level. So on that note, my female athlete of the decade would be Shelly-Ann Fraser-Pryce. She's done incredibly in the 100 meters and the 200. So many golds at the Olympics and the Worlds. Again, she was able to battle injury in 2016 and still get a bronze in the 100. But having a baby and then coming back and winning 2 golds, 100 and 4x1 in Doha, really that sealed it for me as my athlete of the decade.
Wow.
So yeah, that much sums it up in terms of world track and field athletes of the decade.
Okay, so the same. As we round up this, just let me just ask you the same thing. This decade is closing up, end of the tunnel, and then the beginning of the next tunnel. Briefly, in a minute, what do you see from 2020 and so on? Will Nigeria be, a participant, in events that will occur in the next decade?
Nigeria can be a participant. The question is whether we will do or start doing the things that really will make us a factor in athletics again. Back in the 90s and the 80s, we were in the same breath as Jamaica, trying to get silver bronze medals at the Olympics, but that has dried up. Guess what? It's not very difficult. Some of the work that we're doing at Making of Champions is trying to help fix that. You have to find the young athletes while they're still teenagers, and you have to support them 5, 6, 7 years, 8 years before they can become Olympic medalists. And I think that's what we need to accept as a nation. We can't start 3, 4 months before the Olympics and expect that these people will compete against the best in the world. The Olympics is in about 5, 6 months' time. My team at Making of Champions, we started our club 4 years ago. So effectively, I've had athletes training to be at the Olympics for the last 3 or 4 years. And by God's grace, we should see, 3 or 4 of them, hopefully at least, make their first Olympics next year. And, I'm talking about kids who are 19, 20, 21 years old. And those are the athletes that you need to find when they're 14, 15, 16. So that they can have 10, 12, 15-year careers. And I think if we do that as a nation, we're going to be, by the end of the 2020s, we're going to be discussing the world best athletes with a lot of Nigerian names representing Nigeria in that. Because obviously we know that some Nigerians
thank you very much,
list.
Bambo. We just have to cut you there. Go and catch some sleep and catch you next time. It's been a pleasure, guy.
Thank you very much.
All right. We want to go on a very short break. And when we come back, the guys in the house are ready to go. So I thought they were going to tackle Bambo, but they are nodding. But stay with us.